whether it be what you do with your family, friends, your community, any kind of charity, or if it is directly related to the church itself, you have a ministry. The first thing to understand is that God has put you in a position to do whatever it is you're doing, and that should be treated as a ministry, as a service for Him and not something for you. So how do you actually succeed at it? So I apologize to my wife for what I'm about to do, because she doesn't like it when I do this. I apologize to those of you that this will affect negatively. We'll pray for you. But on Thursday night, something interesting took place, not too far from here, just south down 360. Yeah, I like that. About a stone's throw from Six Flags. Right there where 360 and 30 kind of cross. On the southwestern part of that, there's a building. It's kind of large. Most of us know it as the Death Star. Something happened last Thursday night, kind of shook up the world. I'll admit I didn't expect things to go like they did, but they went the way that they did. I didn't expect it. Y'all know I'm a diehard Cowboys fan, but didn't expect it. I just didn't. I had put that down as a loss. Well, something else happened. We won't discuss what else happened. But for those of you that are on Facebook, all you got to do is go to Bree's page. Go there, and she has pictures of what happened. I had to tell her, I like the way all of those that were in black and gold around her had these looks on their faces in some of the pictures that she took. It was wonderful. It made me feel special. So I do appreciate her for that. Here's the deal, though. After that game was over, and as they started to interview players, a theme came out. And the theme was this. All of them kept saying, we just love each other. We just like to play with one another. We just enjoy what we're doing. We're not paying attention to what everybody else says. We're only worried about ourselves. We just love each other. We're not paying attention to what everybody else says. That is exactly the attitude that you have to have if you're going to be successful in ministry. You can't worry about others and what they have to say, but you better have some friends. You better have some people that you can work with. You better have some folks that are going to be watching your back and you watching their back. The other thing I liked is how they all said the same thing. It's up to each and every one to do their job, but we all love each other. That's the other thing too. If you're going to be successful in ministry, you've got to understand you can't do everything. Let other people do what they can do. Stay in your lane. And then what I really liked was this attitude. We'll celebrate this one today, and then we'll get back to work tomorrow. The other thing is you've got to understand that you need to celebrate when it's time to celebrate. Those are the three keys to success in ministry, and we're going to see that as we go through this. First of all, we're going to see that you got to find companionship. Then you got to leverage competency. And then lastly, you got to learn to celebrate. So no matter what your ministry might be, these are the three things that I think that will allow you to be successful. So this 16th chapter, after we've gone through all of Romans and those first beautiful 11 chapters of theology that broke down everything that we needed to know about salvation, who's saved, why they're saved, who's not saved, where they're going, how God did it, how man responds to what God does. And then we got those beautiful chapters about how we are to live our lives because of what God did for us. And we found that there's this overarching theme of love. And we got to the 16th chapter, and then Paul cuts all of this off and basically takes care of business. First of all, he dealt with the one that he gave the letter to take to Rome, Phoebe, and she had business. He made sure that she was going to be taken care of. Then he greeted some of the members in the Roman church that he knew, either personally or knew of. Then he gave them a warning that they should continue to fight false teaching. Because if you remember, Paul didn't write to the Romans to correct them or even instruct them. He wrote to remind them. So all of those 11 chapters, they already knew that. He was just reminding them. He was telling them, keep doing what you're doing. Now he's going to send greetings from the people that he's with. And then we're going to get this beautiful thing that we call a doxology, an ending praise, an ending crescendo. So first of all, in verse 21, we want to talk about finding companionship. So Paul is going to name some people off. And we're going to go through and look at them. He says, first of all, in verse 21, there is Timothy. He says, my fellow worker. You all have probably heard of Timothy. You've seen 1 Timothy, 2 Timothy. If you're any kind of a Bible geek, you understand that Timothy seemed to be with Paul most of the time. Timothy was his son in the ministry. What I like about Timothy is that Timothy hung out with Paul and watched Paul go through some of his most difficult stuff. And then Timothy was always there. When Paul needed to find out about a church, he always sent Timothy. And Timothy would come back and report. These are the kinds of people that you need to have as companions around you. Who's in there for you? Who's going to be there when you go through difficult things, and who's going to be willing to walk with you through those things, and who's going to be willing to help you out when you can't get to what you need to get to. I think one of the mistakes we make about, if I've got a ministry, if I understand that it's a ministry, I need to somehow or another think that I got to make it happen. You can't. It's the first thing you need to understand. Secondly, you can't do everything. You got to have people. God did not create us to go this thing alone. One of my movies that I've really grown to love is this movie called The Book of Eli. Yes. Y'all like The Book of Eli? Yes. And Eli is walking alone, blind. You don't find that out to the end of the movie. That's what I love about it. You don't even realize it. But he's alone. But Eli can't finish his mission until he gets a companion to go with him. It's the companion that gets him to the end. And then what I like about his companion is the same thing that Timothy does with Paul. When Eli's done, guess who takes over the mission? The companion. Timothy took over when Paul was gone. Timothy went on and kept on with the mission. So we got Timothy, and Timothy's half Greek and half Jewish. And so then Paul says he's my fellow worker, and then he says, and Lucius. Now, this isn't that Lucius that y'all know. I'm just telling you. Because some of y'all, when y'all heard the name Lucius, y'all immediately went and you had a picture of, that's not the same one. This Lucius, if you go to the book of Acts in the 13th chapter, he's probably one of the teachers at Antioch. Now, this is what I like, because when you go to that 13th chapter, what you find is when they list all of these teachers at Antioch, they list Paul and they list Lucius and these others, and they all seem to be on equal footing. They're all teachers of God's word. Here's the deal. When you get companionship, you really need to be sure that those who are walking with you have some of the same thought processes, same traits. They understand what it is you're doing, just like if you're walking with someone else, you need to understand what they're doing. So what Paul has done is he surrounded himself with people that were capable of teaching. I don't know about you, but when I think about Paul, I mean, as I was growing up and I would hear about this guy, Paul, and then I heard that he had missionary journeys, I always thought of him as this dude that walked by himself. You know, he just went from town to town by himself, walked in, said, I'm Paul, and maybe they knew him when he got there. Paul walked with an entourage. Paul needed companions with him. In fact, because Paul most likely had some kind of a physical ailment. He really needed people around him to help him get around in the first place. So I want you to understand that the super Christian, this super Christian, this miracle working Christian actually had to have people around him. In fact, if you look at Paul and you say, man, he suffered. Everywhere he went, somebody was out to get him. Anybody ever had anybody out to get you? Have you? No, seriously. I mean, maybe they're trying to assassinate you at work, character assassination, right? But they're out to get you. You know, one of the first things people do when they know somebody's out to get them is they call somebody else to let them know somebody's out to what? Get me. What are you looking for? You're looking for companionship, someone to come around you and protect you, someone to be with you. Paul had that. Lucius was one of them. Then he says, Jason. This Jason is not the Deacon Jason, but he could fit though. This is Jason of Thessalonica. Those of you that are here on Wednesday nights know we've just started our study in Thessalonians. And what we know about that is that when Paul went to this city and he established the church there, when you go to the book of Acts and you read about this, he spent what's called 3 Sabbaths. That would be 3 weekends where he was preaching in the synagogue. And so some of the Jews converted and then he went to the Gentiles. But what he ended up doing was he stirred up a whole bunch of trouble. And so this guy, Jason, was part of those that got converted, one of the Jews that got converted. And Jason took Paul into his household. And so when the authorities were looking for Paul, Paul was hiding in Jason's house. Well, he wasn't hiding. He was in Jason's house. They took him out of Jason's house. They put him in jail. It was Jason that went and bonded him out. Y'all hear what I just said? Yes. Y'all missed that. Let me say this again. Paul stirred up trouble. Jason told Paul, come stay at my house. When the authorities came looking for Paul and took him out of the house, they took Paul to jail. Jason went and bailed him out. Now, he didn't meet Jason until he got to the city. He was only there for 3 weeks preaching before things went crazy and he ended up in jail. So in less than, say, a month, he was in jail and here Jason is bailing him out. That means that Jason pulled out his own money. Y'all still missed it. Let me say this one more time. Pay close attention. Paul met Jason. And after 3 weeks of preaching, Paul tore up the city. Let me put it that way. He made everybody mad and angry. The city officials put him in jail. After he went to Jason's house. And then it was Jason that went and bailed him out of jail. He didn't know Jason very long. How many of y'all have ever bailed somebody out of jail? Don't be ashamed. I didn't ask you if you've been bailed out. I asked you if you ever bailed anybody out. Here's my question. Were they a stranger? Did you know them very well? At the time you did it, you thought you knew them. You wanted to help them because you thought you knew them. Did you love them? So you wanted to help them. Had you known them for more than a month? Is anybody in here that could bail somebody out after knowing them for less than a month? Not many. Not many. Some of y'all got this discernment where y'all can just see people, right? I want you to consider for a minute what's going on here with Jason. Jason has been so impacted by Paul's ministry, and he's bought into it to such a degree that Jason is one of the best friends that you could ever have. Because most of your friends find out you went to jail and might pick you up when you can get out, but would definitely want to know how it was when you went in, but they ain't going to pull out their own money to get you out. In fact, they'll probably be some of the ones saying, shouldn't have did what you did. Right? This is the kind of companion that you want. Now, I'm not one of these people about to tell you to get rid of anybody. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is when you find a gem like Jason, hang on to him. When you find a Jason, hang on to Jason. And so then he says, and this guy, Sosipater. Now, Sosipater may be Sosipater of Berea, and this is a guy that accompanied Paul to Asia. Now, here again, we go with what kind of friend is this? Paul had to run to Asia because where Paul was, he stirred up trouble. Paul's ministry always caused trouble. Everywhere he went, there was trouble. And this guy went with him as he left from one area of trouble and he went to another area of trouble and he went with him. You got to have the kind of person that knows that if trouble is going to be there, they're going to be there with you. Anybody that understands that when you are in ministry, you're going to have trouble can relate to what I'm about to say. When you have companionship in trouble, it makes it not so bad. When you don't have to face it by yourself, it's not so bad. Anybody that's been to the hospital, if you have to go to the hospital by yourself, that is probably terrifying. But when someone goes with you, it's not so bad. Paul had people like Sosipater who were willing to give up what they were doing because they bought into what he was doing and they were willing to travel with him. In ministry, whatever it is, if work is your ministry, and I know some of y'all are sitting there going, how would I know if work is my ministry? That's simple. Are there others around you at work? See, for me, it's my ministry, but it's what I call a niche ministry. Because I work from home. And so I talk to people on the phone every now and then, but some of y'all working in the office with a whole bunch of folks. That's a ministry. Let your light shine. But you know what? It'd be really nice if you had somebody there that was trying to let their light shine with you. It's really nice when you got a companion there that can hang out with you, that's going to watch your back and be there. By the way, if you try to live righteously in front of other people, Satan will put obstacles in front of you. And if you're not, you'll find out who your real friends are. Because they'll abandon you when things go left, right? So you need someone like this that's willing to go with you whenever you're going from one set of troubles into another set of troubles. So find this type of companionship. And then he says, my countrymen greet you. That's Lucius, Jason, and Sosipater. These are his countrymen. They're all all Jewish. And they give greetings to the church at Rome. Now, so that's the first thing. You got to find companionship. Now, when you have companionship, here's the other piece of it. You can't be one of these people that's walking around saying, if it's going to be done, I got to do it. So let me use myself as an example. I really like it when y'all tell me stuff about, say, the building. Tell me the bathroom is flooded, please. Because you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tell Lacaro. Ask me what I'm going to do about it. You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to tell Lacaro. Why? I'm going to stay in my lane. If I go to fooling with the bathroom, y'all will be going across the street. Oh, wow. That's not me. I'm not a plumber. Adrian seen me do some plumbing things. But, you know, she's looked at that and kind of, and we got a new faucet for the kitchen. I bought it. Lacaro put it in. I stay in my lane. I know what I'm capable of doing. You've got to understand what you're capable of doing, but you got to know that you've got people around you. Let them do what they do. So verse 22, this is how you leverage competency. It says, I, Tertullius. Now, Be careful when you read this. I, Tertullius, who wrote this epistle, I've seen this before. See, Paul didn't even, the Romans wasn't written by Paul. Go to the first verse. Paul is the author. He is dictating. Tertullius is something that we call a monasticis. A monasticis is a person who is artistic. In particular, they are what we would call a scribe. They write very well. It would have been Tertullius' job to go out and find the papyrus, probably Egyptian papyrus paper, or the skins that they had to write on. And it was his job to hear what Paul had said. Now understand, he's been traveling with Paul, and he's probably heard Paul talk over and over and over. So when Paul says, I want to start writing this to the Romans, as he hears what Paul is saying, he's writing it down. Why is he writing it down? Because we find out from Paul that when Paul has to write, he has to write really big, which may be a sign that he probably had something wrong with his eyesight. You say, well, what does that have to do with anything? Because paper was expensive. They didn't have it like we got it. You know, we get paper donated to the church. I mean, free. They had to go and pay for paper. And here's the deal. The way that it was basically rolled up into a scroll. They called it a book. And they had to write on this book. And if you wrote big and filled it up and ran out, guess what you had to do? Go buy some more. So what you really needed was, first of all, somebody that could write small and legible, and somebody that ain't gonna make mistakes. So Paul said, I'm not the guy. Because if I start writing, we're gonna go broke. Therefore, I got somebody to write for me. And if you think about it, we often say what? Here is the epistle that Paul wrote to the Romans. He didn't write it to the Romans. He dictated it, and then it was written for him, and then it was sent to the Romans. But who got all the credit? Paul. That's why I think it's interesting that I believe that when they got to this point, that Tertullius looked at Paul and said, do you mind if I send a greeting directly from myself? And Paul said, you know what? Take your credit. Look. Leverage competency and give credit where credit is due. If you're going to be successful in ministry, let people flourish and then give them the credit. Leadership point. Listen carefully, everybody in here, if you ever lead something, if it's successful, it was successful in spite of you. It was everybody else. If it goes wrong, it's your fault. If anything goes wrong in this church, it's my fault. Period. Don't point to nobody else. It's pastor's fault, except for the money. Money go crazy. Look at Eric. Look at Latham. Look at Johnson. I'm going to put that one off on them. I don't touch it. I don't have nothing to do with it. You can point at me for putting them in charge of it. I'll take that responsibility. But if anything goes wrong, I'll take the blame for it. And I'm sure Lacey and Boston will jump up and take the blame as well. But that's what good leadership does. Good leadership says if it goes wrong, it's my fault. But when it goes right, everybody else that's involved should get the credit. Give credit where credit is due. Leverage the competency. So then in verse 23, watch this. He says, Gaius, my host and the host of the whole church, greet you. I like this because he talks about Gaius, and so since he wrote this from Corinth, you go to Corinthians and you find in the first chapter that Gaius' name is mentioned. So Gaius is the household where the church at Corinth met, and I notice that he says that he's the host. This means a couple of things about Gaius. Gaius, A, has money. Y'all catch me? Gaius has money. So Gaius is the one that's doing the hosting. And Paul says, I want you to let you know that I'm going to leverage this thing over here. I'm going to leverage resources, and it's Gaius. Gaius is my resource. He's the host and the host of the whole church, and they all greet you through Gaius. Keep that in mind. Gaius has money, all right? By the way, we also find in 1 Corinthians in the first chapter, in the 14th verse, that Paul actually says, I'm glad I didn't baptize any of you except for Gaius and Crispus. So this is one of the people that he baptized. All right, then we have this one, Estratus, the treasurer. So since he's writing from Corinth, we know that Estratus is the treasurer. That word treasurer means he's the household runner, or he's running the household of the city of Corinth. This means he is he has a very noble position. He's extremely an important person. And this speaks to the level of Paul's ministry, that he's actually got it all the way up into this corrupt city, that there are city officials that have been saved. So he brings him on. So we got a rich guy who's probably, if he's got money, you know, he's well known. And then we have this city official that he's actually come on and he's bringing him into this. Now watch what he does here. And then he says, and Quartus, a brother. I could preach a whole sermon on Quartus. You know why? Because in the context with which Paul did this, he pulls out a rich man, he pulls out a city official, and then he says Quartus. Quartus means four. Slaves were given numbers and not names. So this is probably a freed slave. And what Paul is doing here, Paul says, I'm going to show you the depth and breadth of what ministry should look like and how we go about understanding what's going on. How successful is Paul? Paul can say, guess what? The rich get saved, the government official gets saved, and the slave gets saved as well. We like to put it this way. God saves from the uttermost to the guttermost, or the guttermost to the uttermost, or from the bottom to the top, or from the top to the bottom. But the fact that he put Quartus in here, and then he says a brother. Imagine Quartus there in Corinth. Paul is dictating this to Tertullius, and he says, and Quartus, a brother, sends you greeting. Quartus was a slave who'd probably been freed, and here he is, probably at the low part of the totem pole for society, and yet he is put in the same sentence with two dignitaries. You know what that means? That means God has no respect of person. Think about this. Quartus's name is now known throughout the ages. We don't know what he did. We don't know what he was about. But what we do know is he was as much a brother as was Gaius. He was as much of a brother as was Erastus. So whatever he had to offer, Paul here highlights him and says he is a brother. I don't understand how Christians get beside themselves and start thinking that they're better than other folks.
Come on now. Come on. Come on.
Can we talk about this for just a second?
Yeah. Come on.
I remember, and I'm not going to call names, but I remember watching one of these great, I guess, conventions. You know, it's one of them things when a lot of famous or well-known ministers come together in a city and they go to some big place, you know, big convention center, and they're going to all like preach, and they've got a beautiful theme, and you got to pay to get in. Right? So it was one of them things, right? It wasn't a church, you know, as far as I know, there ain't no churches yet that have charged anyone to get in. But this was a paid event. One of the dignitaries got up and made a statement that has stuck with me in a negative way. And really to this day, if you can't tell, it still bothers me to hear this. But this individual had been, I guess, what they perceived to be at the top of the ministerial platform. You know, they were well known and everybody was buying their books and all of that. They made this statement. And then they said that God, watch this, God came in and did something to them, and they ended up where they were in, and no offense to you people from Louisiana, but this is what they said. They were in the swamps of Louisiana preaching to little bitty churches of 10 and 12 people for several years. And that was a punishment. So those people are not deserving of the gospel. Because their point is that God had brought them back to where they were now at things like this and preaching to, you know, thousands of people and back into this being well-known thing. Listen to me about ministry. Ministry is wherever God puts you.
Come on.
Ministry is wherever God has you do his work. And ministry is going to be looked at from the perspective of your heart in doing it. God looks at your success not from what is accomplished. He looks at your success from your obedience to him. Because what's going to be accomplished is going to be accomplished whether you do it or you get somebody else to do it. Please understand this about ministry. If you're not doing it, God will get somebody else and they will do it because it's going to be done, or else he would not be God. Amen. Which means when you understand that you are in ministry, when you figured it out, if it's your job, your family, if it's your community, whatever it is, what you then understand is you are going to be successful. Because whatever the outcome is exactly what God wants it to be. Amen. Amen. It has nothing to do with you counting the number of people or the amount of money, which is really stupid. That has nothing to do with success in ministry. Now, if you're in business and trying to have a successful business and it's not a ministry to you, then yeah. How many people buying your products and how much money can you make? You know, it's monopoly. You know, who you compare yourself to? Bill Gates? You know, who you going to compare yourself to? But when it comes to ministry, first of all, you're not comparing yourself to anybody. Remember what I said about the Cowboys? We ain't looking at nobody else. We don't care what nobody else has to say. Love the ones you're working with. Leverage the ones you're working with. And then realize, you know what? If it's 2, if it's 2,000, if it's 200,000, you know, if I'm Billy Graham or if I'm Jimmy Smith. And y'all don't know who Jimmy Smith is. And neither do I. But I'm sure that there's somebody named Jimmy Smith that has a ministry. That name is too common. But Jimmy Smith is just as important as Billy Graham. And God, when God says, well done, it's well done with what I gave you. That's why it says you've been faithful over a few things. You know why it's a few things? It doesn't matter how many people. Because think about it from this perspective. God is ordering your steps. We read in Ephesians chapter 2, we read in verse 10 that it's God who has put before us good works that we should what? Walk in them. It says he's ordained, means he's okayed it. So anything that we accomplish, anything that we think we've done, we have to come back to him and say what? Because of you, not because of me. That's why I think he puts quarters down here, because he wants everybody to understand. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I got Gaius, rich fella. He provides so the church has a place to meet. That's a wonderful thing. And it doesn't take anything away from him. And I understand he's got this dignitary from the city, which probably lends credibility to the ministry for those that are looking at it. Well, you know, maybe he's in it. Maybe it's something to it. But who is Quartus? Quartus is no better or worse than the first two. And he includes them. Understand that. Don't look down on anyone. Don't bypass anyone. Because you never know what competency they may have. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, what's his competency? He's a brother. And everybody don't act like a brother. All right. So let's get to the big thing here. If I got companionship and if I'm leveraging the competency, things are going to go right. You know why? Because of what I'm about to do. I'm going to learn to celebrate. Why can I celebrate? Well, because God is in charge. Okay, watch what he says here. Verse 25. Now to him. When you see those words, now to him, this is the beginning of what we call a doxology. A doxology is a praise of thanksgiving. It is when, you know, you come together and party. How's that? There should be a party in your mind and in your heart that is about to explode. It's got to come out. It's like a tent meeting. Y'all know what a tent meeting is? You know, the tent, you drive down the street and you see them out there and they have, you know what's funny about a tent meeting? Because there's no walls. Everything that's going on under the tent actually comes what? Out of the tent, right? That's what a doxology is. A doxology is Paul's way of saying everything that is in me is about to come out. And I want you to understand that what Paul does here, Paul is not going to most of us at the end of anything we're writing to somebody, we would go back and review it, right? Tell them what you're going to say, tell them, and then what? Tell them what you said. You know what Paul says? I'm going to tell you, period, and when I get through with that, I'm going to celebrate the fact. Not that I told you. In fact, what Paul does here, Paul sets everything else in Romans aside, everybody else aside. Paul says we got to end where we need to end, and we got to end on God. Here's how you celebrate ministry. It begins with these words, now to him, and him is capitalized. So there's a whole lot of ways to break this down. I'm going to break this down into 4 areas for you that I think every celebration in ministry needs to come from. He says, now to him who is able. Do y'all know what able means? It means to have power. It means that you have the power to do something. So here he is. He has the power to do something. So here's the first one. We are stable. Look at what he says. Now unto him who is able to establish you. That word establish means to build you up, make you stable, give you power, give you strength, give you everything you need to be what you need to be. So go back to now to him. Now to him who is able to establish you. That means that only God and nobody else, not you yourself, there's no magic trick to this. Only God can give you what you need in order for you to be strong enough to stand, in order for you to have stability in this world, in ministry. It all comes from God. It's not what you know. It's not what you learn. Look, it's not your companions. It's not even you leveraging their competencies. What you understand is all of this has been brought about by God. You wouldn't have companions in the first place if it weren't for him. You wouldn't have anything to leverage in the second place if it weren't for him. Everything goes back to God. So the celebration has to have a figure to celebrate. Most of us only like to celebrate ourselves. Who in here has had a birthday party? Some of y'all ain't never had a birthday party. Never. Who ain't never had a birthday party? Ever. Okay, let me ask this question again. Some of y'all sleep. Who in here has had a birthday party? Okay. Question. Did everybody you invited show up? No. Isn't it sad that in order to get 50 people to show up to a celebration for your birthday, you probably need to invite 100? I mean, weddings are the ones that kill me. I'm talking about the weddings where you got the big formal thing, and then you're gonna have a reception, gonna be in a whole other place and all of that, even if it's in the same place. Everybody will miss the wedding. They'll come for the food. No, I mean, I've done too many of them. Never fails. You invite 200 people. This is the funny thing, because everybody, when they hear wedding, they think of free food. You invite 200 people, 140 of them show up for the wedding. The other 60, and then you'll find out it's 80, because they bring people you ain't even know was supposed to be coming, show up after for the food. Is it to celebrate you? No. They came for the what? Food. If you don't believe me, say I'm going to get married. I want you all to come and see me get married. We'll not have no food. We're not going to do that. We're going to save our money. No food, no drink, no nothing. Just a ceremony. Invite 300 people. You get 10, you did good. Nobody cares about you. I'm just being honest. Nobody cares about you. Don't nobody want to celebrate you. You want to celebrate you. Take that pressure off yourself. Celebrate God. Because here's the thing. You don't need anybody else to celebrate God in the first place. Because when you celebrate God, you go, now unto him. You know what you don't say? You don't say, all of us have come together to say. You say, for me. This is what Paul is doing. See, your celebration is, if you want to join in, join in. But if you don't, I don't need you. See, if you have a birthday party and you invite 100 people and 10 show up, your heart is broken. What are you saying? I don't know nobody like me. Well, take that pressure off yourself. Celebrate God. Don't worry about nobody. You ain't got to invite nobody to your celebration. Has anybody ever celebrated God by yourself? Or do you wait for church? Please don't. Because folks come in here in all kinds of attitudes and stuff. Y'all don't know because y'all back there. I'm up here. I see it. One of these Sundays I'm going to come in here, get up here, and I'm going to go, you, there's something wrong with you and you. And you stop crying. I'm going to do it. I ain't going to tell you when, but it's going to happen. One day, you shut up. Stop talking. You stop texting. We're here to celebrate God. I ain't going to do that to y'all. The only reason I ain't going to do that to y'all is because what y'all don't understand, I understand. We're here to celebrate God, but that's up to you. I'm the only one that can control my doxology. I can't get you in it. If you don't want to roll with it, then roll out. See, ain't that a good way to have a party? If you come, fine. If you don't, oh well, you missed out. And so he says, what you got to understand is all about him. He's the only one that can establish us. And I like this. Paul says, according to my gospel. And most people will read that and say, man, how arrogant is Paul? This has nothing to do with arrogance. Do you know what gospel means? It means good news. Would you take it better if he said this? According to my good news. You know what good news is? That means you're reporting something, right? That doesn't mean you made it up. It means you're just bringing forth what you've already heard. And that's what he's saying here. He said, what establishes you is this good news that I have. And he says the preaching of Jesus Christ. And most people might read that and think, okay, Jesus is preaching. Wrong. No. No, this is the preaching of Jesus Christ. Y'all get that? This is not Jesus preaching. This is preaching about him. So Paul says, here's the deal. Do you know what will establish you? The good news and the preaching, the proclamation of Jesus Christ. That is what gives you strength. Don't get mad at me. But if you ain't getting none of that, you ain't established. Y'all missed it. If you're not getting the gospel, the good news, and if you're not getting the preaching of Jesus Christ, you're not established. And you know how you know you're not established? You can't handle nothing. I'm really finna mess with somebody. You can't handle anything. In fact, you think everything is against you. You look at the world and you say the world is too hostile. Everything is against me. You know why? You're not established. See, when you get established, the first thing you understand is the world ain't supposed to work for you. Amen. That's the first thing you understand. The second thing you go is, I ain't even supposed to be here anyway. I'm out of place. This place wasn't supposed to be working for me anyway. I'm all right. Nothing wrong with me. I've been established. See, I got to understand. I go back and watch how this good news works. I go back and I go, man, God picked me. God picked me. He placed me. He left me. And then he told me, love everyone around you. But Lord, there's a whole lot of mess going on. I know this. There's mess by design. Designed intelligence. That's so intelligent you can't see it because you're in the mess. But I'm above the mess. Outside of the mess, I see the whole thing. I see the end of what you are in, and I've already seen the victory. It's okay. Oh, that's why you're telling me that I the just have to live what? By faith and not by sight. I can't go by what I see. I got to go by what I know. I know victory's mine. That's how you get established. And then you live in a way where you don't allow nothing around you to get you. So when y'all hear me get up here and say, stop crying, let me tell you what to cry for. Right? So that y'all understand. Mourning is good. Y'all know what to mourn means, right? That means to cry when someone leaves. It means to, look, you can mourn the sick, right? You can mourn the unsaved. Cry for them. But when you don't get that promotion, I ain't got much sympathy for you. Because that promotion, if you didn't get it, God said no. That ain't part of your ministry. Ooh, I don't like that. I wanted that promotion. I know you did, and I wanted it for you. But somebody smarter than both of us, somebody that knows what's really out there, has said, this is not where you need to be. I need you over here. Do you know how easy it would be to live life if we could just do that? If we could just really sit back and do that. Because we all have goals and aspirations and things we want to do, but you've got to understand and trust God that when you don't get where you think you ought to be, God is putting you where you really need to be. And when that happens, you ought to be saying, thank you for keeping me out of that trouble, because obviously it wasn't going to be right. And some of y'all even know this intuitively, because some of y'all right now are sitting here right now going, I need to make more money. If you had it, what would you do? Tell the truth. Don't shame the devil. Tell the truth. What would you do? You'd eat better, right? Is that what it is? You eat now. What does better mean? Something probably give you more cholesterol. Move from beans to something else that you ain't got no business. I'm telling you, you've got, that's why Paul says, with whatever you have, learn to be what? Content. That's establishing you. That's what the gospel is doing. It establishes you. You know, you're saying if I had that job, if you had that job, you'd be just as ignorant as the one you're on right now. So he says, according to the revelation of the mystery kept secret since the world began. Man, this is number 2. The mystery of the ages has been revealed. Y'all don't get that, do you? It's so many people walking around going, I wonder what life is all about. And Christians ought to be sitting there going, I know the mystery. If you're a Christian, you know what life is all about. You should know. I mean, you got people looking up at the stars trying to figure out where we came from. Stupid. It's been revealed. It's in Genesis 1:1. God created. There you go. Big Bang don't work. None of that works. God created. I know. I know. Look. The mystery of the ages has been revealed. I like this. It's been kept secret until what? Until Jesus showed up. You see what he says? He says, the revelation of the mystery kept secret since the world began. That word revelation means it's been revealed. What the world was looking for has now been revealed. And it says, but now made manifest. That word in the Greek literally means that you've gone to a play and God has put it all out before you so you can see every bit of it, every scene, everything that you need to understand. You say, well, when did he manifest it? Look at the next part. According to the command, but now made manifest and by the prophetic scriptures made known to all nations. How did God put this play in place? The prophetic scriptures. That's another way of saying the scriptures that the prophets wrote. All right. When you look at those, you have everything that God had in this mystery. Old Testament, mysteries. New Testament, revealed. The mysteries of the Old Testament. What ushered in the New Testament? Jesus. Yes. So that Jesus is here. We're on the other side of Christ. We now understand every mystery there is in the world. So when somebody says, I'm trying to figure out why in life I got to go through the things that I go through. You know what you ought to tell them? Here's the mystery. It's in the word. You were born to live and then die. Yes. That's the mystery you're missing. Oh, there's the other part of it. After death, you're not really dead. You're either going to one place or the other. Here's the big mystery. If you have Christ, you go to the good place. If you don't, you go to the bad place. Now, if you want to spend your life trying to figure out your purpose in life and meaning of life and all of those things and die and go to hell, that's your prerogative. But that kind of makes you stupid. It really does. Not ignorant, because the ignorant would be you didn't know. But you remember what Paul said in the beginning of Romans? Do y'all remember in the first chapter what he said? He said that everything that there is to know about God has been revealed. Everything that there is to know about God is within man. Man can't reject God. God has revealed himself to man. So it would be stupid to reject him. So when you find yourself in hell, guess what you say? I was dumb. It was my fault. I did it to myself. Here's your mystery. There's God. You're either with him or you ain't. That's it. Period. End of story. Why is the grass green? Doesn't matter. Why is the sky blue? It doesn't matter. None of that matters. You know what matters? Where are you going? That's all that matters. So the mystery's been revealed. It's been made manifest. It's come to us in the scriptures. We've seen it all. And then he says, according to the commandment Do y'all see that? According to the commandment of the everlasting God. So the third thing is, this is by God's sovereignty. He reigns. Everything that's going on in life, God has commanded. Just like that whole thing we went through with the election, understand, for God to be God, there is nothing that could happen that he doesn't know about, doesn't allow, if you like it that way, or dictate. Nothing. If anything happened by chance, God is not God. I know this is some deep philosophy, but I want y'all to consider what I'm saying. If anything happened by chance, God is not God. Well, what about my car wreck? If anything happened by chance, God is not God. 12 years old, driving, Greenville, Texas, Sales Street. They've been to Greenville. Going over a hill, me and my grandfather. I'm 12. That would have been, he was 80 something. Yeah, he was 80 something. He's fussing at me because I'm driving, I'm 12. First of all, y'all hear what I said? I'm 12. I'm driving. I done drove from our house on the other side of town, across town, so that me and my little brother can go and visit with my cousins, Anthony and Spence. So I'm driving and forgot they had moved and went to the wrong house, so I'm going up Sale. There is a railroad track with no arms. He's fussing at me because I got the radio on, because I'm 12 and I'm cool. You know, I mean, I'm leaning. He done already fussed at me on that because that's what we did back in the day. I'm talking about, thank you, somebody that understands 1978, we were leaning. So I'm leaning, I got the music up, and I'm looking at him, and he's fussing at me. I'm like, granddaddy. MKT is in my window. Do y'all want MKT? That's what you see on the train. Yeah, not the side of the train. It was the front of the train. It was right there. And I had the music up, so I didn't hear the. So, it hit us. Yep, got hit by a train. Why, Lord, why? You know what he's saying? I was in control. It wasn't an accident. You know what he's telling me? It wasn't an accident because that taught you something. Now, y'all be like, wow. That taught you something. And it also did something. I'm giving you this story because I'm trying to show you how God's sovereignty can work. There were complaints about that track. Remember, I'm 12. Y'all do understand I didn't have a license, right? I mean, y'all do understand that. I'm 12. I'm 12. I don't have a license. Do you know what happened after that train hit me, a 12-year-old without a license, shouldn't have been driving a car, with his 80-plus-year-old grandfather and his little 6, 7-year-old brother in the back seat who jumped out and took off running. We thought the train had knocked him out of the car. We couldn't find him. But this is what happened. About 3 weeks later, there were railroad arms on that thing. They paid for my grandfather's visit. None of us got hurt, but they took him to the hospital. They paid for that. I didn't have a license. The company got in trouble for not having arms on the thing, even though I was a 12-year-old. So I could say, well, God used me, allowed me to get hit by a train so that others could be safe. But you got to start looking at things from the perspective of there's a purpose for everything, no matter how bad it looks. Because he wrote in Romans, all things work together for the good. Wait. I heard this in a song and it tripped me up because I've been singing the song for the longest. And it was one of them, I was teetering on it, but I was singing, it sounds good. But he said, all things work for my good. I was like, whoa, no, that's not what that scripture says. It says all things work for the good. Not my good, the good. all of our good. It's the good. Things that don't seem to be for my good are to the good. And when I trust that, all I can do is say this. If I'm on the other side of it, hallelujah. And guess what? Had I not made it through, where would I have been? With Jesus. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Either way, isn't it great that you could actually go to sleep and shut your eyes and literally say, if I wake up in this world, hallelujah. If I don't, hallelujah. That's the point that Paul is getting to when he says that all of this is according to the commandment of the everlasting God. Notice the words everlasting. And then he says, for obedience to the what? Faith. Obedience to the faith. Do what you're supposed to do by faith. Stop trying to reason it out. God says something as simple as don't cuss. Don't figure it out. Don't try to reason with it. Don't. I know I say that because almost everybody in here cusses. Okay, thank you. Y'all didn't know I had that discernment. I could look in your eyes and see the cussing coming out. He said, don't cuss. Don't try to figure it out. Don't try to reason with it. Just stop. Just don't do it. Why? It's obedience to what? Faith. How do I not do something? He says, don't do it by faith. Don't steal. By what? Faith. Why? Because it's against the law? No, don't do it by faith. Because many of y'all in here have stolen and the law didn't do nothing to you. By faith. To God. I like this. The last thing. All of this, everything that is done and everything that we celebrate ought to always be to one thing and one thing only. God's heaviness. God's glory. To God alone wise. Yes. Yes. Don't wax cross that. Don't miss that. Alone wise. Yes. Not with your wisdom. Alone, he's wise. When I look at God, the first thing I should feel is dumb. Unwise, foolish, ignorant, whatever floats your boat. But he's the only one that is wise. That's why everything makes perfect sense when it comes to him, not human sense. Alone wise, be glory through Jesus Christ forever. Amen. So when I come to celebrate, when I take the time to celebrate, I end up in this place where I realize that it's all by God. Everything commanded by him. And he is the heaviest one in the room. He's the one that gets all of the glory. I don't get any of that glory. I give it all to him. Everything goes to him. Now, here's the funny part in giving everything to him. I relieve myself of the burden of having to be great. I relieve myself of the burden of having to prove anything. I relieve myself of the burden of having really to do anything. Everything is ordered by him. Y'all got to get that. I don't even fight my own battles.
Yes, thank you, Lord.
All I have to do is stand and get this victory. So as we come to the end of Romans, I'm going to ask you to do one thing. Go back and keep reading it. And keep reading it and keep reading it and keep reading it. I know at first you'll be like, man, I don't know what as you keep reading it, you're going to find that you've already won. You're going to find that you're already victorious. And I promise you, everything in life around you, whatever it is, it'll be put in its place and you'll be established and you will be one happy camper while you're here on the earth. God bless you. Amen. All right, let us stand and come together.